Hey, how's everybody doing? Um, how's today? How's today different from yesterday? I went grocery shopping myself. I spent $261 on groceries, and that did not include any wine or beer or anything like that. And that to me is a lot of money to spend on food. Like I don't have kids, and I like that's me stocking up. So anyway, had a big groceries trip today. That's the big news of the day. So anybody else give us homework? That's good. That's great. That's fantastic, actually. I think that the adaptation to the online learning thing is important, and I hope that it's happening. I hope teachers are getting better at making, using the online classroom in a way that's effective for you guys. Okay, it's 5:30. Time to shut up. Here we go. I'm obviously I do want to keep talking, and that's the problem. That's been the problem, is that I always want to go for longer than I have. I'm trying to keep these things to 15 to 20 minutes. We're going to do that today. We're going to do it, and we're going to start right now. Okay. So the topic today is swum is a word and other grammatical oddities. It used to be swum is a word and other irregular verbs, or something about irregular verbs. And then I realized that would be a very, very short presentation. I'd run out of material really quickly. So I threw in some other things, some other grammatical oddities. Just the things that you sort of, the things that would surprise the sort of average user of the English language. I just surprised my husband with one of these. He was listening to me rehearse, and he's like, I didn't know that you could, and I can't tell you what it is, but these are the things we don't know how to do because people don't do them. That's actually, that's the moral of the story, is they're weird and people don't know how to do them because everyone avoids them. So you won't have to avoid them, and you won't have to be a grammar, you won't have to become a grammar snob to do these things, but you'll know when they're correct. Okay. Enough chitter chatter, Tad. Here we go. Let's do it. Oh, I just switched windows. That's not good. Here we go. Let's start with regular verbs. Before we get to irregular verbs, we got to know what a regular verb is. These are the ones that aren't so interesting. These are the well-adjusted people whose parents are accountants and who have a happy and harmonious family life, and like, God bless them. We love them. We all probably want to be them, but they're not very interesting. They're not as interesting. Sorry to say. I love you all who are those people. I'm getting myself in trouble probably, which I shouldn't do. Moving on. Here's the verb I chose, walk, to walk. So present tense, I walk every day. Just a statement of fact. Yesterday, that's the clue that it's the past tense, I walked 2 miles. All you need to do to create the past tense verb is add ed at the end of it. With regular verbs, that works 100% of the time. And then here's this other past tense. Oh, there you go. Add the ed ending. The other past tense verb is the past participle. This is actually the past participle being used in a present perfect verb tense. Eli, I see you raised your hand. That's probably an accident. I'll take questions at the end. How about that? So far this week, I have walked 10 miles. So I threw in the helping verb have, and I used the simple past tense walked, and that created this present perfect verb tense. Present perfect means it started in the past and it's still happening today. There's a bunch of other verb tenses. That's not kind of the point. We are going to be focusing on verb tense in terms of what makes a verb irregular. There are other ways to be irregular, and I'll show you those too, but we'll get to those in a little bit. But yeah, we're talking about tense today. That's a regular verb. Let's talk about irregular verbs. There are about 200 of them in English. These are the ones that they're the memorizers. They're the ones that you have to, like, if you were studying English, if you didn't grow up in an English speaking household, you'd have to put these on flashcards, and memorize them straight up, because there's not a lot of rhyme or reason, because they're irregular. They don't follow a rule. I've got a different one on here, but one of the ones I always think about is go. I go. Yesterday I went. This week I have gone. So go, went, gone. That's really crazy. That's really strange. Like you have to just memorize that. And like, where did the went come from? Where did the NE come from for gone? What a strange word. If you grew up in an English speaking household, then you'd never ask that question because you learned it. Oh shoot, I'm about to do the thing that always makes me go over, which is tell a story that I hadn't planned to tell. Okay, real quick. Just an interesting fun fact of language development. Kids, when they're young, when they're like under, say, 4 years old, they will use the irregular verb, right? So they'll say, I went. And probably even younger than that, probably even younger than 4, like 2 or 3. They'll say like, I go, I went. And they'll have memorized that. They'll know that's the past tense verb. As they get older and as they learn the rules, they'll get it wrong again. And this is not like an opinion. This is actually a fact of childhood language development. And they'll say, I goed, right? Go plus ed, because they think that's what you're supposed to do, right? They're following that rule. And then eventually they correct that again at like age 6, and they say, oh, I went, right? So it's interesting. It's funny how like you don't know the rule and you memorize, then you learn the rule and you apply it, you over apply it, and then eventually you know the rule plus the exception to the rule. That's our goal. That's our goal, is to know all that stuff. Anyway, the older that a word is, the older a verb is, the more likely it is irregular. The longer it's been around, the more time we've had to screw it up, basically. So here's the classic. I am, I was, I have been. Am, was, been. I mean, just think about the relationship there. I mean, is there a relationship? I'm sure a linguist would tell me that there is, that might be actually really interesting. But to the modern eye, they're totally unrelated words. So I think that's pretty cool and pretty interesting. And of course, to be has been around forever. And of course, it's irregular. I actually think that walk is an interesting one. I chose that as my standard regular verb. Walk's been around for a long time too, but that one has not turned irregular for whatever reason. Okay, we're going to do a little activity, and we're all going to read something together out loud. And at first you might rebel against this, but I promise you it'll be fun. It's been fun every time I've ever done it, which is, I've been doing it for a long time. I'm in denial about for how long I've been doing it, because I think of myself as a young man. I'm not as young as I was. Anyway, let's go down that rabbit hole. Wouldn't that make for an efficient presentation? Okay, we're gonna look at this page. This is a page from our SAT book. And this is a list of commonly misused irregular verbs in English. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna read this list. And you're gonna read with me, and everyone in your house besides you is going to hear me and hear you and be like, what the hell are they doing? And it'll be fun. Let's just do it. Okay, here we go. Break, broke, broken. Speak, spoke, spoken. You got to say it with me. Awake, awoke, awoken. Freeze, froze, frozen. Forget, forgot, forgotten. Get, got, gotten. Ride, rode, ridden. Rise, rose, risen. Arise, arose, arisen. Drive, drove, driven. Write, wrote, written. Eat, ate, eaten. Fall, fell, fallen. Give, gave, given. Take, took, taken. Shake, shook, shaken. Put, put, put. Quit, quit, quit. Read, read, read. See, saw, seen. Ring, rang, rung. Sing, sang, sung. Sink, sank, sunk. Drink, drank, drunk. Begin, began, begun. Swim, swam, swum. Run, ran, run. Come, came, come. Become, became, become. Do, did, done. Go, went, gone. Grow, grew, grown. Throw, threw, thrown. Oops. Know, knew, known. My bad. Fly, flew, flown. Draw, drew, drawn. You know what's weird? When I did that in rehearsal, I did the exact same thing. I read the exact same one in the wrong order, so I knew I was going to do that somehow. Let's talk about the words themselves, right? So infinitive is also the present tense verb. The past tense is, like I said, the thing that happened in the past. Simple past tense, when it happened and it's over. And then the past participle is the word. We use these a lot, actually. The participles are really, really handy. We use them to create a bunch of stuff, from verb tenses to adjectives to nouns. It's pretty cool. But that's why you have to know them, right? Because they've got pretty frequent usage. They show up in adjective clauses a lot. So the ones that I think are the weirdest are ridden. That to me just looks so strange, sounds so strange, and people avoid it. And then all the you ones. So like rung, sung, sunk, drunk, begun, swum, run, I guess. The way you use those words as a verb is you put a helping verb in front of it. So like the doorbell had rung 4 times before I answered it. That's correct, right? That's the weird thing that like people aren't used to that, don't expect that would be right. And they don't say it because they don't They don't believe that it would be right, right? And so then by not saying it, no one else hears it and no one else knows that that actually is correct. Swum is weird, you know. I have swum 3 times this week. No one says it. Literally, no one says it because it sounds so freaking weird. But now we know, and just because no one says it doesn't mean they're not going to test you on it on the SAT. They will, I promise. Cool, good. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. I'm on a new computer today, like a brand new computer. This is like, you know, essentially I've been using this thing for about an hour and 15 minutes. It's going well so far, I think, I hope. Moving on. Last thing on irregular verbs. This is something that very recent revelation I had about the English language and how it changes. And my perspective changed. Like I had a new perspective, and then that perspective was updated recently. So I'll tell you what it was. Language is constantly changing and evolving. That's a fact. You know, it changes for our needs. There's a reason why 16th century language doesn't sound like 20th century language. It's 21st now. There's a reason why Shakespeare sounds unfamiliar, but he also resonates, and that's a topic for a whole other lecture. In fact, I thought about giving that lecture, but whatever. It was right for the time, and our language is now right for our times, right? So like if I say lol, 20 years ago, no, we would have known it was 20 years ago. 30 years ago, we would not have known what lol meant. Literally, that would have been total nonsense. And it makes perfect sense now. LOL, lol, whatever. Everybody who's on this call knows what that means. So I think that's kind of interesting. But this is how like the use of the language and the grammar actually changes too. These are the conjugations, and you all know these already, of the to be verb in English, right? So in present tense, I am, you are, she is, we are, they are. There's something strange here, okay? And there's something that it's always been this way, and it's always been this strange, and I never noticed it until recently. I noticed it, it was pointed out to me because, you know, there's a changing way that we use pronouns, right? We now ask people, which pronoun would you like to use? We're basically moving away from a gender binary setup where basically there are 2 ways to be, you're male or you're female, and there's lots of complexity to that, and it's a really interesting topic, and save that for another day as well. But one of the, you know, popular sort of, you know, nouveau pronouns is they as a singular pronoun, right? Single gender neutral pronoun, right? So basically you can be a they if you don't want to be a he or a she. Cool. My issue, the thing that happened for me first was I didn't like the fact that when you said they, you would use the verb are because are is plural. And I was like, but this is a singular person, right? So shouldn't it be they is? But then that would be introducing this weird sort of like grammar mess up, you know, inherently. And, you know, I don't like building grammar mess ups into the language. That feels, oh, that's funny, by the way. There's my old computer. You see it? And there's the new keyboard and mouse. It's such a long story. Anyway, so I had a problem with they are, but then I learned that you, the singular second person pronoun you, used to be a plural pronoun. And that's why it's you are with the plural verb. And that never bothered me. And it's never bothered anybody else, right? It's just, that's what we say. We say you are, and we all get it, and we all agree. And it's irregular, you know, and that's fine, but no one has a problem with it, right? So saying they are for a singular they subject, I now have no problem with that. I'm totally way into it. They are, Godspeed, that's great. That's perfect. Okay, here's my fun fact. I'm already going long because that's what I do. Okay, here's our first poll question. Can you start a sentence with because? So let's put it to a vote. Let's put it in the chat window. You guys see where the Zoom chat window is there. So Zoom webinar chat. Okay, yes, I got a yes. My first vote. In certain scenarios, yes, yes, yes. Geez, this is pretty good. I mean, I have no idea what the right answer is. No, good, Eli, thank you for being the dissenting voice. I got another no, thank you. This is good. 3 no's, awesome. Depends, good. Great, I like this. This is great. So let me tell you, the answer is yes, you definitely can. Ooh, Camille, if you're starting with the dependent clause, don't steal my thunder, Camille. Come on, like give me some I gotta be able to share some news with the people, right? Here is a sentence that starts with because that is done correctly, exactly the way that Camille just pointed out. Because the SAT had been postponed until June, Tutor Ted and his merry team of tutors canceled all of their fun plans for May. So that is a dependent clause at the beginning of the sentence. A dependent clause has a subject and a verb. That's the SAT is the subject. Had been postponed is the verb. We have that, and then the because makes it an incomplete thought, which makes it a dependent clause. Okay. If you have a dependent clause and you put a comma after it, and then you have an independent clause, and this is just one way to build a sentence, but that's the sort of like most fundamental way, that is a sentence. That will be a sentence. So the answer is yes, you definitely can. This is one of those rules where you were told when you were younger that you can't do it because they thought that you would write incomplete sentences. And I even remember one time in second grade, me answering a question, they said, why did the horse stop for water? And I said, because it was thirsty. That's not a sentence, right? But when the teacher tells you, you can't start a sentence with because, they're misleading you, right? Like they could say that's not a complete sentence. You can write it a different way. Because it was thirsty, comma, the horse stopped to drink. But the answer, yeah, there is a way to do it. This is that sort of like exception to the rule category. Clauses are confusing. Yeah, let me say one thing about clauses. Every clause, and the nomenclature, this is really key. In grammar, don't get confused by nomenclature. If you get it, you get it. I think sometimes the names are more confusing than helpful. So like that versus which is the difference between a non-restrictive clause and a restrictive clause. Who cares? Literally, who cares? There's a way to do it, and there's a way that makes sense for your brain, and the name adds zero value. That's it. I'm gonna tell you what a clause is. A clause has a subject and a verb. That's it. A subject, a verb, they match. Sometimes they're dependent, as in they can't stand by themselves. Sometimes they're independent, which means they can stand by themselves, which means they're a complete sentence. We definitely could spend a lot of time talking about that, but that's essentially, at like the root level, that's what a clause means. Has to have a subject, has to have a verb. There are also phrases which don't have to have those things, but let's take that, set it aside, and deal with that at another time, which would be fun. That'd be a good one to do. I mean, I'd happily build sentences, but yeah, 17 minutes. I was planning on 15 minutes tonight. Okay, sorry, which is fine. This is fine. We're learning. We're having fun. Okay, second poll question. Can you start a sentence with and? I would love to get your votes on this one too. Yeah, super split. Good. All right. So the person who got it right is kind of all of you, but really, I'm with Zoe on this one. The answer is kind of, but only when you're taking poetic license. So technically, and is a conjunction, and technically you can't start a sentence with a conjunction. The funny thing is, even on the SAT, which is testing you on whether or not you can, follow these very specific grammatical constructions, the word and will be the first word of a sentence somewhere on that test. On a reading passage, on a writing passage itself, it'll be built in there because people take poetic license, because it's nice to start a sentence with the word and. Notice that this, this is not an actual sentence, but only when taking poetic license, because it doesn't, the thought's not complete, but I started with but, right? That's a conjunction as well. You can do it if stylistically you want to do it, right? So the answer is yes, you can, but the SAT will never test you on that, right? So like do it in your own writing. It's fun to do it. Have some fun with your writing. Communicate like crazy. You know what I mean? Like put your heart and soul into your sentences, and that may involve starting a sentence with the word and you'll be correct by doing so. Yeah. So and Johnny, that's the key question. Why do teachers tell you that you can't do that? Let me save that. Let me do the last slide here, and then I will answer that question, because I think that's a really interesting question. All right, last one, another poll question. Can you end a sentence with a preposition? So a preposition would be a position word, basically. Little words, short words like to and for and towards, on. So again, Noah saying yes. No, says Zoe. Some you can, yes, I mean, yeah. You can, but you shouldn't. Maybe. Yeah, this is fun. These are interesting questions because the answers, the answer to the first one, the because one, that's ironclad. Like, yes, you can start a sentence with because if you do it the right way. The and one treads this kind of like middle ground of like people do, but technically you're not supposed to. This one is one where the answer has actually changed over time. So when I was growing up, I mean, I think it's probably changed in my lifetime. You really couldn't, and now you can. You know, so isn't that weird? Yeah, so the answer to Johnny's question is basically yes, that a preposition is a position word, a short word, through, with, for, on, up, down. I bet some of you could know all these. I don't know. I don't think I ever memorized all of them, but they're all position words that suggest a direction, and they're often paired with verbs and that sort of thing. This is a quote. This is a quote that will help, I think, explain why it is that, yes, we should end sentences with prepositions. So ending a sentence with a preposition is something up with which I will not put. So just like, sit with that for a second, right? What that person's trying to say is ending a sentence with a preposition is something I will not put up with. I will not put up with. Two prepositions at the end of that one. We know what they mean. Technically, if you're not ending sentences with prepositions, you need to move those prepositions to earlier in the sentence like we did here. That quote is normally attributed to Winston Churchill. I don't believe that he said it. I am attributing it to some jackass. If the person's being funny, then I appreciate that, and it's a deep level of comedy. Otherwise, it's the person who's making a point in the most asinine way possible. But like I said, the answer has changed over time, and let me show you a little demo here. The quote sounds weird. Exactly, that's the point, Laura, right? It's like the quote's terrible. The quote is technically correct, but sounds like garbage. So that's the funny thing, is that, you know, language is about usage. It feels like a black and white category grammar, and some of the rules of grammar are black and white, right? Like, I am, not IR. Like, IR sounds funny, right? Because it's wrong. If you're being very poetic, you could do it, but you'd have to be writing poetry to do that. So that's not how we are operating here. Other rules are a little bit less black and white, and this is one of them. So here's a sample sentence that ends in a preposition. What are you waiting for? The for is the preposition. Now, would you rather say it correctly and say, for what are you waiting? When was the last time you heard someone say, for what are you waiting, right? And what would you think if you heard them say that? You'd think like that they have some sort of like disorder, you know what I mean? Literally that they grew up in, you know, maybe they're English, possibly English, which is not a disorder. It's totally fine. But it would be unusual. It would be so unusual that it would kind of catch you off guard, and you'd be thinking like, I wonder if that person has ever had a brain injury. So it's so strange. You're allowed to end a sentence with a preposition. I one time had a student's father who was a writer, and like actually a really successful writer, and we're talking, and I said something about, you know, well, we need to know what those are for. And I ended with the for, the preposition. And then he started to correct me on the preposition, on the ending the sentence with the preposition. And I started to correct him, not correct him, but basically say, actually, in present English, in modern day English, you're allowed to do that, what I just did, because I was actually conscious of it as I was doing it too. Not to test him or anything like that, but just because I know that you're allowed to do it. And and then he started to object to me, and my student like grabbed me, like grabbed my shoulders. She's like, okay, well, and like, you know, basically shoved me out the door because she knew that it was going to be a bad situation from there. And Johnny, the answer to your question is exactly this long. I went 23 minutes again, because I always go 23 minutes, because even when I rehearse and do it at 15 minutes, I go long. The answer to your question, which is a good one, is basically, why do teachers teach you the other way? They shouldn't, is what I would say. They shouldn't. No teacher should teach a rule that they're going to break. And if there's going to be an exception to the rule down the road, they should tell you that at the beginning. Basically say, at this level of mathematics, we are not going to take the square root of a negative. Down the road, you'll learn how to do that, but for the purposes of this math, we're going to say that that basically breaks the function, right? You can do that, and you can say that, but I think you need to teach that way rather than surprising students. You know, to me, that's rude, and that's a bad way of teaching, to like come back and say, like, that thing I told you about, yeah, actually that wasn't true. So I think that I think it's good to build the exceptions into the teaching and tell people, I'm not going to teach you this today. You are going to learn this down the road. Let's not start sentences with because now, but you'll be able to do that in a couple of years. So talk to me then. That's it for me for today. Thank you guys. Of course, Noah, absolutely. Tomorrow is triangles, so we're doing shape geometry. Yeah, I know. I just that's my thing too. It's like I don't know. I want to be. I know. I always want to get along with my teachers and be like in a situation where the conversation always makes sense. You know what I mean? We're always like seeing eye to eye, and the person's always telling you the truth, and you can count on them always telling you the truth. So thanks, Ryan. Thank you, man. All right. Thanks, Antoine. Thanks, Jonathan. Nice talking to you earlier. Thanks, Laura. Yes, and nice work, Camille, on that grammar. That was impressive. I didn't see that coming. Thanks, Zoe. 5:30 tomorrow night. Let's do some shape geometry. Adios, amigos.